Four HBCU players make it to the Walter Payton Award watch list. How does the HBCU mindset align with the special teams mindset in the NFL? And our feature Friday comes in the form of new leadership for the SIAC. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am back from vacation, so just in case you forgot, I am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And man, it feels good to say that. Remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. You can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. And today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online, who has you covered this season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And man, we're kicking off today's episode with something I think is major. It's big time, right? We have four HBCU players who are up for the FCS MVP. I only call it that playfully. It's truly called the Walter Payton Award. They are on the Walter Payton Award watch list. So just like all your major awards, if you're looking at the Power 5 conferences, right? Those postseason awards going into the season, you have a list of players that they think are serious candidates. It's a large list, significantly larger than the list that will be at the end of the year, of course. But these are the players that it's like, watch that guy because he might have a dominant season. So the reason I call it the FCS MVP is because it's technically the most outstanding offensive player. You'll never see a defensive player win the Walter Payton Award. They'll just win the Buck Buchanan Award. That's the slight difference between this award and the actual MVP, because defenders are actually on the table when discussing MVP in the NFL. But 9 times out of 10, you know it's going to the best offensive player that season. You know that's what it's going to be, right? So, and most times it's going to be the quarterback, which is also the truth here. And that's another similarity that they actually have. And that is the fact that of the 35 years that this award has been out, 24 times the quarterback has won. That leaves only 11 non-quarterbacks to win the Walter Payton Award. Now, when you add up and do this math right here and you look at it, that gives you 11 non-quarterbacks. And of that, only 2 have been in the last 20 years. That coincides with the growth of the passing game. That makes sense. All quarterbacks, for the most part, over the last 20 years, right? The last non-quarterback was Cooper Kupp in, I believe, 2015. So he was a wide receiver, the only wide receiver to win. And then one more was a running back. And if you go back just a singular year, you would have 3. A whopping total of 3 in 21 years, right? So let's look at the 4 players who are actually on this list. And you have Shaq Davis, Xavier Smith, Kemari Averett, and then Shedeur Sanders. Now, to me, Shedeur is the clear-cut, most logical option. It's the one that I can see the clearest happening. It's the easiest road to actually winning it because you look at how he fits the build, right? First off, I think that an HBCU player winning this award would be major. This is a major thing if they were able to pull off this award. I think Shedeur has the best chance. He fits the mold, and by the mold, I mean quarterback. He fits quarterback, right? And that's one disadvantage that everybody else has. That's one advantage that he has. If you want to look at the more optimistic way to, articulate that sentence, that's the advantage that a guy like Shedeur Sanders has, that he plays the quarterback position. And let's not take away and act like he doesn't do it well. Last year, he was recognized on a national level. He was the freshman of the year nationally in the FCS. So to me, this is not only a logical fit when we're talking about mold and the prerequisites of, not technically the prerequisites of being a quarterback, but if we're being honest, the prerequisites of being a quarterback, it's highly advantageous, right? And that's just because of the impact that the quarterback position has on a play-by-play basis. It's looked at as the most valuable position on the field, rightfully so. And that value that they have on the field is shown by the postseason awards, such as the most outstanding offensive player. But like I said, let's not act like Shedeur just is a quarterback and like, okay, yeah. No, he's a quarterback who is actually very good and has already got or received national acclaim from these same people. That's why I think that is logical for him. And even if this is a guy who, as a sophomore going in this year, even if he doesn't get that Walter Payton Award this year in 2022, he's got his junior and his senior year where he should remain on this watch list. And as a freshman of the year, this would be major if he made that jump from being, hey, you're the best young guy to you're the best guy in the country. That would be very interesting to see happen. Now let's get into the wide receivers because you have two of those when it comes to HBCUs in Shaq Davis and Xavier Smith. Let's go ahead and go to Shaq Davis, South Carolina State, big play threat. And he does it at 6'5". He was the standout player in the Celebration Bowl, and he was the MVP, right? But even if he hadn't won MVP, even if they would have given it to Corey Fields, the quarterback, the standout player still would have been Shaq Davis. Now, he first caught my eye in that game because he caught a touchdown and did the primetime shuffle. And I'm looking like, oh, okay. Now what are we doing here? What are we doing here that you're doing a primetime shuffle? You disrespectful. Now you got to back it up. And it was not a hollow celebration. It was not a, man, I'm happy to be on this stage celebration. No, it was I have the confidence in myself that I can celebrate in the way that I did because that should have sparked something in Jackson State. Just being honest. It didn't, but I mean, also they weren't the better team on that day. So it might have sparked something. They just couldn't do anything about it. But that's a celebration where I have enough confidence in myself that I know I can back up this display of confidence. It's not cocky. It's not cocky. You know why? Because he came back and gave you 2 more touchdowns in that same game. 3 touchdowns in essentially the HBCU Super Bowl. That's a major performance. And even outside of that game, he's averaging 20 yards per catch. He's a big play threat at 6'5". This is a dangerous, dangerous player. And we'll see how much that momentum, because that was a stud game. Like, he had a good season. But that game right there, whew, let's see if that momentum rolls over for Shaq Davis, South Carolina State wide receiver. And then you go back to the SWAC and FAMU, and you have Xavier Smith. And he's just a highlight reel. He is dynamite. And that's one thing that I believe he really has that will propel him in this conversation. Now, if you're looking at all-time career, he's pretty high in most receiving things when we're talking about active players. I think that Xavier Smith is a player who, being such a highlight guy, right? Being that player who has those ooh-ah moments, being that ooh-ah guy is going to do wonders because those moments stick out to people. Like, yeah, you have the guy who gets in and out, right? Just, okay, every 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards. It's good. And when you look at the accumulation of stats, you're like, oh, man, that dude, a lot of times those guys go down and say, oh, that person was better than we thought. Guys like Xavier Smith pop off the screen and you know who he is from the jump. That's one thing I think he really has going for him. And then Kemari Averett, tight end out of Bethune-Cookman, he's not winning this award. And this has nothing to do with his talent. It's 3 tight ends. A tight end has never won this award. He would have to go absolutely bonkers to win this award. So I don't even want to focus on him winning the Walter Payton Award. Him being on this watch list is significantly more important. Let me not completely rule him out. I had a conversation with my dad the other day about what a realistic chance was, and we talking about puncher's chance and things of that nature. I give him a puncher's chance, but just the position that he plays does not receive the value that I think is typically going to win this award. But that guy is a freaking stud. Let's just be completely honest. That guy is good. I've said it before. He's the reason I want to watch Bethune-Cookman. Kemari Averett is a phenomenal tight end at a position that is naturally a mismatch. And he's one of 3 tight ends on this list. So basically, they're saying he's one of the 3 best tight ends in the country on the FCS. That could go wonders to get him to a Senior Bowl. And a Senior Bowl could do wonders to getting him to being drafted. This is a player who, I'm not looking for the big time award. What I'm looking for personally is the fact that where does he stack up against his peers? And now what can he do going forward? So I think that him being on this list is more important and significantly more relevant than whether or not he actually wins the award, because this speaks volumes for how people view him, and how people view him is what will actually lead to him getting drafted. Now, going forward, we're going to continue talking about HBCU players, but now instead of the collegiate players, we're talking about some of the rookies. We're talking about players who are fighting to get a spot on that 53-man roster, and that lines up a lot. it really comes close to lining up to exactly how the special teams mindset and players who are focused on the special teams think about the game as well. Before we do that, I do want to tell you about BetOnline, because BetOnline is the number one place for all of your wagering needs. And instead of betting blindly, go to BetOnline because they have podcasts, they have news, things that are going to educate you and help you actually make money. I can go put my money down on an MLB game. I don't know nothing about baseball. I don't know anything about baseball, really. That's not my thing. That's not my sport. But I can go put money down on it if I want to. But I appreciate BetOnline because they want to educate you. They understand that you can't watch every single sport at every single time. That's going to help you make money. And that's the reason you should want to go there. They have NBA futures. I would say NFL futures, but football is here. Woo! That's exciting. Let's just get that out of the way. But they have the NFL. They have NBA futures. They have MLB, NHL. They have anything you could possibly need because they are the most versatile, in addition to being the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day, I truly do appreciate it. Now let's talk about how the HBCU mindset lines up with the special teams mindset. Now, you heard me exclaim in true passion that football is back on the ad read. And I truly am excited about that, right? But I was on vacation. I've been gone. I haven't been here since Tuesday. I appreciate y'all staying patient and coming back to me like I never left. I do appreciate that. But I've been gone since Tuesday. Really longer than that, but been gone since Tuesday. I knew I was coming back Friday, right? I knew that I was going to come back Friday's episode. And I had a conversation with Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints host, and, good friend, good mentor to me. And we were talking about a lot of things. We're talking about football. And I knew football was coming back on Thursday. So I knew I wanted to have some sort of topic relating HBCU athletics, HBCU players to the NFL. And it's funny because Ross and I had a conversation on Wednesday just detailing the similarities between HBCU players and players who are trying to make it into special teams, the mindset of that. And he said something to me that I thought was profound, and I hope that I'm going to share it with you because you weren't there. But I also hope that I can expand upon that and give why I think it's actually something that is very real, something I never thought of, but it was something that in the midst of our conversation, I thought was real, and I wanted to share it with you and expand upon it, like I said. Now, he said something that was interesting. He shared a conversation that he had with somebody else, and he was just talking about, if you know Ross, you know he's a special team fanatic, like that. He loves special teams. He's an interesting guy. He's a special breed, all right? The people who love special teams, special breeds. But, it's part of the game. But Ross is on another level where he shared a conversation saying he loves to watch special team drills when he's at practice, right? When he's at Saints practice. And with that, someone's like, why though? Like, I understand enjoying special teams and appreciating the value in it. I do that as well. I appreciate the value in special teams. But to sit there and love special teams drill, that's a special kind of guy, right? So why is that, Ross? And he shared it's because all of these players, or the majority of these players, are fighting for their life. Not in the sense of, actually fighting for their life, but there's players who, if you're not good on special teams, you're not making the team, period. Your roster spot is dependent on how valuable you are at special teams. See, you're not going to be a starting safety. You're not even going to be a backup safety. So as a third string safety, if we want to keep more than that, what are we going to do? If we want to keep 6 receivers as opposed to 5, you got to be able to play a little bit of special teams. We're only going to roll out our 5, but that 6th guy, he needs to produce some sort of value, likely elsewhere, because it's not going to be at the wide receiver position. It has to be at special teams. It's those type of guys who are fighting and saying, I understand this is my way onto the roster. In addition to being that, I also think there's 3 attributes that come with special teams players. Now, this is now where I come in and I think I expand upon it because he did talk about the similarities, but I just want to kind of get into it a little bit more. See, to me, I think that you have guys who are fighting as far as they're just fighters. They're guys who have to fight. They're used to being counted out and they're used to being doubted. Now, I don't think I need to tell you how HBCUs and HBCU players have been doubted historically, right? That's something that we grapple with, something that we talk about. They've been counted out because, let's be real, some of these are just small school problems. And I actually have an issue, I should say, when people get upset at HBCU alum, HBCU players talking about these things, they speak about it as if we're whining. No, these are small school problems. If you pay attention to Division II, to FCS schools, they have these competition barriers that FBS teams just do not have. It's talked about, you got to prove you can do it on another level. It's a conversation that needs to be had, but we're not talking about all other FCS schools. We're talking about HBCU. So that's why we're focusing in on here. So please, let's not act like we're talking as if the doubt is a one, or we're the only conference, the only group of schools that receive that. It's just that we're the group of schools that we're currently talking about. Anyway, they're used to being counted out, used to being doubted. A lot of times it has to do with that lack of competition that a lot of scouts feel, right? There's talented players at HBCUs and Division II schools and FCS schools who just don't get that nod, don't get that love because, oh, they had a good career, but they had it on a small school scale, right? So that comes with the fighting. All of that is fighting, understanding that you've been counted out the minute that you enrolled and stepped on that field at your HBCU. People don't think you're going to be able to make it to that next level. The same with special teams. People don't think you're going to be able to make it to that next level in the sense of actually having a roster spot. A lot of HBCU players don't get that nod of being or feeling like the NFL dreams are valid. I think that this is something that is very similar. And one thing I think is interesting about it is that a lot of HBCU players are then going to have to make it on the team by way of special teams. And that's interesting because now that mindset goes, instead of having anything given to you, because you look at a player from Ohio State who now has to go play special teams, it might be something where it's like that mentality to fight for everything that you have. It's not something that they may not have it. I'm not going to just cancel them out because I don't know their background outside of Ohio State, right, in this hypothetical situation. But the point is that mindset of HBCU, all HBCU players know how to fight because they understand they have to do it for likely the 4 years that they've been in school. I think it's a perfect lineup. And when you're looking at that's the avenue that they'll probably have to use to get into the roster, get onto the roster as a rookie, I think it gives them a good chance. And as you're watching preseason football, look out for the special teams guys. You know, a lot of times it's too much to see. The camera work does not show you it. You might not even know they're on the field. It's a scrum. But just listen and see if the guy who makes the tackle is your HBCU player. If you're watching Jacksonville, let's see, is it Ryan McDaniel that is making that tackle on special teams? Just things like that you might want to look out for and just keep your ears out for, because it's kind of hard to see, especially with the broadcast angles. So just be checking that out. But going forward, we're going to go into a much more upbeat. We're going to go much more upbeat, right? Because this is more serious. But we're going to go much more upbeat, and we're going to talk about the SIAC commissioner, well, the new SIAC commissioner, I should say, because after 13 years, leadership has changed, and this is our feature Friday. We wrap up today's episode of Locked on HBCU with our feature Friday. Y'all know how it is. On Fridays on Locked on HBCU, we pick a player, pick a person, pick an event, and we feature it, right? And today we are featuring it with our new SIAC commissioner, Anthony Holloman. Now, this is new leadership in one of our D2 conferences. Feel like it's a lot of switches. I feel like I've talked about a new commissioner in every conference except for the SWAC. I could be wrong, but I know obviously the MEAC had theirs at the top of the year. And I'm pretty sure I covered that. This is obviously the SIAC now. I feel like the CIAA might have had a new commissioner as well. It just feels like there's so much upheaval, but that kind of lines in with how college football and college athletics is right now. It's just a lot of upheaval, period. So let's get into it and let's talk about our new SIAC commissioner, because this is the first time in over a decade, 13 years. This is a major shift to move over from Gregory Moore, who was the previous commissioner, now to Anthony Holloman, who is leading the SIAC, but he's originally a CIA guy. So he's not a stranger to HBCUs in the slightest. However, he is a CIA guy as opposed to SIAC. So that's just kind of interesting. It's not like they have beef or anything. It's not like they're rivals like that. It's not even SWAC and MEAC level at the moment, right? But it's just interesting for me to note that he was on the other side of the D2 HBCUs. Now, that right there gives him an understanding of being an HBCU athlete. Or excuse me, he played track. I mean, he played football and ran track at Johnson C. Smith. That right there gives him the knowledge and the understanding of being an HBCU athlete that you naturally will want to have. That's a personable level. We're just talking about on a personal level of, oh, I understand what you were going through as a player. I care about the players likely. Well, now let's get into his education. Let's get into his background as an education that I think actually make him a very good leader for this. And he had a bachelor's. He earned his bachelor's in communication. Then he went on, got his master's. That was in sports science. I'm not sure how that's going to apply. But then you're looking at his master's, which is in education, in specifically educational leadership. Now, when we're looking at his bachelor's and his doctorate, his doctorate was in educational leadership. When you're looking at those, now I'm looking at, okay, communication is naturally a skill for leaders that you're going to want and need to have. All right, let's keep rolling. You're looking at educational leadership. Well, last time I checked, I think that this is a leadership position as a commissioner. And I think the ability to lead is going to be extremely important. Last time I checked. These are no brainers. These are things you're going to need to do. You're going to need to be able to communicate to all of the schools. And you're also going to need to be a leader because you are the head. You are now the leader of all of these schools, and you're responsible for taking care of all of these schools. Now, I thought that one thing that's super major, in addition to being the Fort Valley State athletic director, he was also the VP of advancement. Now, if you're cool just staying there, if you're cool just sticking in the mud and not really going further and not advancing, you're probably going to hate this Holloman guy. Oh my gosh, look at this guy trying to get us to do better. What? Come on, man. So clearly, this is somebody who I feel like the things that he's done in the public eye, whether that was his degrees, whether that was his athletic pedigree, whether that was his previous job, all of these things line up to saying, hey, he might be pretty good at this. I think he'll be all right. Then you have Savannah State President Kimberly Ballard Washington, who had this to say about Dr. Holloman. And she said, Dr. Holloman's background as an athletic director and as a VP for advancement makes him the perfect person to serve as the next commissioner of the SIAC. I agree with that, Ballard Washington. His HBCU experience in several institutions over the years will help him recognize numerous issues that occur within the university setting and lead to good relationships between the conference office and all of the institutions within the SIAC. I do think that's a very good note of his experience in multiple HBCUs, because I can have something happen here, right? Let's just take it as a house. Let's just say I'm over 10 houses and I've only lived in one house. This is all I know. I might just say, oh, these are issues here. Might not feel like these are widespread issues. However, if I've lived in 5 different houses, if I've been at 5 different HBCUs, I can look there and say, oh, this was the problem here, here, here. So at 3 different HBCUs that I've been to, this specific issue was a common and similar issue. It was a repeating problem. Okay, this needs to be taken care of because this is not a one school issue. This is a foundational issue and exactly what we need to fix. So I think that is a phenomenal point because that experience in multiple places gives him a different perspective. It gives him possibly a different sense of urgency, and it gives him a specified focus where I can say right here, this has been a problem for years. Let's make sure that we take care of that because it's important. And as a leader, these are the type of things that we have to look into. And as a VP of advancement, I feel like he has the experience in saying, okay, we got to continue moving forward. And moving forward, a lot of times includes fixing our issues. We can't just ignore those and expect to move forward just by pumping up the things that are already good. We just can't expect that. So being well versed in the HBCU landscape, the degrees that he has, the athletic pedigree that he has, I feel like all of these are very big reasons why Anthony Holloman will find success and the SIAC as a whole will find success underneath Anthony Holloman's leadership. Now, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day. Make sure for your second listen of the day, you are checking out our conference shows on the Locked On Network, such as Locked On ACC, Locked On SEC, and Locked On Big 12. They are putting on phenomenal content. Now, in the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. And next week, we are returning to our 5-episode, 5-day-a-week format. So with that, we're going to kick it off with a bang with a 2-part conversation around the expectations of former number 1 overall recruit in the nation and current Jackson State athlete, Travis Hunter. You're not going to want to miss that. So until next week, take care, stay blessed. Peace.